Welcome back to another episode of ROC Boys Football. We're continuing with our 2022 season previews as we take a look at the Florida Gators. Dill, this is one of the more confusing teams to kind of project heading into the season. They have a lot of roster turnover, a lot of new faces, including a head coach in Billy Napier, who I think is a really good fit in Florida. When you look at where that team and why that team struggled last year, Dan Mullen seemed to just lose control of that locker room. The effort, I think a lot of Florida fans would say, is not there. And I'm kind of excited to see how this Florida team looks under some new management here.
Dan Mullen was probably one of the worst coaching performances in the history of coaching. Like, I actually thought that Florida team, okay, you were last year probably the second best team in the SEC, maybe 3 behind Georgia, but it was close. And then this year, like, you kind of felt like, okay, if they just don't get worse on defense, their offense, like, you thought Emory Jones was going to play well and had some talent coming back, you thought, like, oh, maybe we can be really good. And it just nothing worked. The offense wasn't great. Defense wasn't good. It's just like, it was such a weird year for Florida with such talent, I felt like.
And it really got off the rails after that loss on the road at Kentucky. And the season really just fell apart. Guys, before we get into the depth chart, kind of talking about what we're excited about, what we might be concerned about, just wanted to give a shout out to all you guys. The support you guys have shown the channel has been absolutely awesome. You guys are about to listen to me sell Dill on this Florida Gators football team. I think they can be good. So if you guys do like the content, you like talking Florida Gators football, consider subscribing to the channel. We appreciate it. And let us know any players that we're missing out on. We're trying to learn about all these teams heading into 2022. So if there are some players that we might be sleeping on, y'all let us know, Dill. We got to start on the offensive side of the ball with Anthony Richardson. I know you are a fan of him. I don't need to tell you on
Everyone knows he's awesome.
Yeah, and he's a guy that I don't think got a fair shake last year. I think the pass catching was really, really bad, and it's really hard to be a successful quarterback when you're going in and out every 2 drives like Dan Mullen was doing.
I also think when you come in as the 2, that's just like really, you don't get to practice with the ones. It's just, and it didn't seem like there was much of a competition. It seemed like Emory Jones was the guy. They were going to start him. So I'm guessing he didn't get a great camp in. And so I think you're right. Everything was just stacked against him, but like you can't deny the talent. The talent,
and it's really hard to look at Anthony Richardson, and I know I'm going to compare him to one of the best college football players we've seen in the last 2 decades. It's hard to look at him and say he doesn't resemble Cam Newton with that body, and he's phenomenal with his feet. He's really hard to bring down. He runs the ball hard. 7.9 yards a carry last year, and he has a great arm. You want to see him dial in the accuracy and see the field a little bit slower. Like, it seemed like everything was a little sped up, and I think that was in large part what you said. When you're getting reps with the 2s, you're not working with these starting wide receivers, you're coming in and out of the game. It's hard to develop that chemistry and kind of calm down when you're in the pocket. This year, if you watched his spring game, and Dill, I know you're not huge into spring games, if you watched Anthony Richardson in that spring game, he looked in complete command of the offense. I think this offense might look a little bit different this year. I think Dan Mullen traditionally has done really well with running quarterbacks, but Billy Napier with Levi Lewis at ULL last year and the last couple of years, they like to establish the run, not only with really good running backs, but with their quarterbacks. And Anthony Richardson certainly has that capability.
He's the perfect guy to establish the run from the quarterback spot because, like, he's not an explosive athlete, I wouldn't say, but he's huge and, like, very physical. And he's just a fall forward guy. He got 4 or 5 yards, it seemed like, minimum every touch. And that didn't matter if they blocked for him or not. So it's like, yeah, and you do have to replace some holes at the running back spot that maybe we can get to. So it's probably going to be helpful to have a kind of a hammer and a guy who basically can play both outside running from that quarterback spot.
And he's bigger than most of the linebackers that are going to try to tackle him. I mean, 6'4", 240 pounds. This dude is built like a legitimate tight end. And I think he's better in space than you give him credit for. When he gets in space, he makes people miss. Okay, so the running back spot. This is where I need to sell you on. I think they severely misused that running back room last year. Dameon Pierce should have gotten the ball way more. When we were looking at his tape leading into the 2022 NFL draft, it was crazy to look at the stats and how many carries he got last year? Only 100 carries. He should have been toting the rock 150 times at the least. Was easily the best running back. Question is, who's going to replace him at that running back spot? There are a bunch of guys. Obviously, DeMarcus Bowman just transferred out, I was excited about, but Montrell Johnson is going to be a true sophomore coming in from ULL. Ran for 1,000 yards last year as a true freshman. You love that, right? And do you have questions on how is he going to look against SEC defenses? Sure. Naquan Wright is a proven commodity. I think they're going to use him more as kind of that scat back, get him in space and let him cook. I like what he brings to the table there. The guy to keep your eye on, Lorenzo Lingard, former 5-star transfer from Miami. He seemed to have emerged as that RB1 out of camp. Looked good in the spring game, and he's a guy that track speed. He's a big physical back. I think he's going to have a breakout year for the Gators.
That would be huge because at the end of the day, you're losing a guy who was a legit college bell cow with Pierce.
Should have been used as a college bell cow.
And whatever. Dan Mullen, I don't think he was watching the games when he was coaching it, but you do need to replace it's not easy to replace those legit pro backs. It's just not.
And I'm high on Lorenzo Lingard. And I personally don't have a question mark about that back because the chances of Montrell Johnson, Naquan Wright, or Lorenzo Lingard hitting and being that feature back, I think is pretty high. The question mark is the wide receiver spot. It was a weakness last year. And I don't know if it was a full-on weakness or was the quarterback play and kind of the choppy offense kind of the played a role. But the guys I'm looking for is Justin Shorter, obviously a former 5-star transferred in from Penn State a couple years ago. A guy that waiting behind some good wide receivers. And then last year was kind of his breakout year, in my opinion. And then the quarterback play just wasn't it. He's a guy who's 6'4", 230 pounds, a physical guy who moves really well. I think he's going to be used vertically a lot, throwing some contested catches. He's a very physical guy at the catch point.
See, I get that. Yeah. Justin Shorter, big physical wideout. I think he does a good job working the field for the most part. My concern with Florida, though, is don't you think they need a home run hitter? I mean, last year it didn't feel like they were getting a ton of big plays out of their wideouts, and certainly the two who were giving them seemed like they might be gone. And you want it because with Anthony Richardson, you got a guy who's huge, extends plays, and has an absolute cannon of an arm. So I feel like you want a guy who can make some plays down the field and break some plays, because I think that's where Richardson shines, is the guy can throw it 60 yards easy and accurately.
I think Justin Shorter can be that guy vertically. I think Xavier Henderson, he's another bigger body guy, 6'3". I mean, most of these wide receivers are 6'2 plus.
Now, I know they're big, but they don't. Do they run fast enough? Is kind
of my question is who is going to be the guy, and then maybe could be the listeners kind of fill us in here. Is there a wide receiver that we feel good about kind of working underneath and being really good after the catch? Think about someone like Kadarius Toney. Wasn't necessarily a vertical guy, but when he caught the ball in space, people couldn't tackle him. Is there going to be a guy like that can kind of make some plays in space from that wide receiver position, kind of falling into the same mode as Clemson, where every single wide receiver looks the same, 6'3", big physical vertical guy, but where's the guy who's going to be the chain mover underneath?
That's probably is Naquan Wright, because Naquan Wright is a legit good athlete, really good with the ball, and feels like a guy who could step in and play that role. And again, because it's hard because these wideouts are super talented in a sense, all kind of big recruits, big athletes, all that. I just think you want to see. I don't know. I think you need more, because I think that's part of the issue from the quarterbacks is there wasn't a ton of separation, and they're just you probably didn't get enough from that unit, but you are getting two really good guys back from it, and Shorter and Whitmore, and we'll see it. Henderson, obviously a younger guy, but might be able to step in and give him something.
I mean, he was a former top 70 recruit nationally, according to 24/7, so he's got some juice. Again, I think these wide receivers didn't get a chance to show what they're about last year. Their offensive line, they bring in two transfers. Osiris Torrance, probably one of the best interior offensive linemen in the whole country. 6'4", 335 pounds. This dude is an absolute mauler. He's going to help to establish the run game. Cameron Waits, the other guy coming in from University of Louisiana Lafayette, two guys who, when you watch ULL last year and how they were able to establish the run, it was big thanks to Big Osiris Torrance and Cameron Waits. I think those guys are going to be able to help move, kind of establish that line of scrimmage. The left tackle, Richard, and I'm going to mess up his last name. I practiced it before. Goriaj. He's also a really good left tackle. I think I did all right there. I think the offensive line will be decent. I think
they're getting the whole left side back, and in what you said, adding 2 really talented transfers. So I think you are kind of looking good at that spot. You just have a lot of guys who've played a lot of football at the end of the day. I mean, you see them all, redshirt senior, redshirt junior, senior, all just a very experienced group. And I thought the left side played solid. I mean, BJ Ojulari gave it to Richard Gorge a little bit in that game, but BJ Ojulari is a stud. So
also one of the best
I think
players.
As you get an experienced unit back with some talent, I think you could see a really good unit. And that's really important. I think you're going to need to run it.
And now the defense. This is the most frustrating aspect of Florida the last couple of years. They're talented on the defensive side of the ball. We're going to about to list a bunch of names that I am really excited for. And I was saying this 2 years ago. I was saying it last year. And they just haven't played up to that standard. I think the physicality has been bad. The tackling in space has been bad. The effort at times, I think, has been bad. But the talent's there. And obviously with the new coaching staff, hopefully we can see these guys realize their potential. And the guy I want to start with is Gervin Dexter up front. He's a guy that was a former top 10 recruit, according to 24/7, coming into his 3rd year. You watch him last year, I think the word you'd use is inconsistency. I mean, at times, dominant. At times, he looks like one of the best interior defensive linemen in the country. He's a guy that I have marked in the 2023 NFL draft as a guy that could raise his stock. I mean, 318 pounds. He's a good athlete. You want to see him disengage blocks better. You want to see him reestablish the line of scrimmage better.
That's just what's so frustrating with Dexter is like you see really good moments, but you just wish he'd and you also see too much him getting set back 2 yards on run plays, and it's just really hard to play defense when your D tackles are giving up that much ground. But if he just does a better job playing low, anchoring himself, but also keep that ability to make plays, because he did make some plays last year. Just play in and play out. Can you be that stud?
And that's what you see when you're talking about evaluating him in the 2023 NFL draft class with guys like Jalen Carter, Brian Brazee. Those guys dominate every single play. And so you want to see Gervin Dexter kind of reach that level because he can do it. And you see it on the field. He's just got to make that a consistent part of his game. Before we move to the linebackers, I want to give a shout out to Princely Yu. He's a good player. He plays hard. Not necessarily the most talented guy in the field, but
he's long. He's long and he's pretty strong. So he did do a good job pushing tackles. You're right. Around the edge, not an elite, bendy guy. But there is part of his game where you're right. He plays hard. He's long, and he is pretty physical, I thought.
And then Brent Cox, probably the best. We loved him last year, and he could have gone to the league. You obviously lose a guy like Zachary Carter, but Brent Cox was probably the best player on that defensive line. He plays kind of that stand-up backer role. He's one of the most polished pass rushers, and he should be. I mean, this is going to be his 5th, maybe 6th year. He's been playing football for a long time, started his career at Georgia. You can tell he's played a while. He knows what he's doing. He's one of the best pure pass rushers in college football. He's a guy that I'm extremely excited for. The question is the depth. Billy Napier stated it. He's worried about depth on this team at multiple positions, but at the defensive line is probably the biggest position. You lose a lot of guys from last year. Are they going to be able to stay healthy enough up front? Because the guys are talented. They got to stay healthy. The linebacker spot, you lose Mohamed Diabate. You lose Tyron Hopper, who really hurt. I thought he was going to have a breakout year. It's disappointing that he didn't stay. But Ventrell Miller comes back. Didn't play much last year. I think he only played 2 games. He was another guy that was high on our list last year. I'm looking for him to have a big year here.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to have 2 very experienced linebackers because Amari Burney's played a lot of football too. I thought he had a solid year. I don't see him as a pro prospect per se, but a really solid college linebacker, kind of a guy you can certainly win with if Ventrell Miller can be that pro player, that rangier, kind of all do it all kind of backer. I think that could be a really good tandem, and I also think Jarek Wingo can work his way in too. Because
look good in the bowl game.
You saw moments where he looked real, and you knew he was a super kind of a talented guy.
Yep.
He just needs to put it together on the field. And as he gets into his junior year, can he add some depth and some ability to bring some athleticism that maybe a Bernie doesn't quite have.
And then the secondary, probably the two people you got to mention first is the safety tandem, probably the best safety tandem next to Alabama in the SEC. Trey Dean, I love Trey Dean, how he plays. He fires downhill, gets in the backfield, really good tackler in the box. And then Rashad Torrance, more the center fielder, very good when the ball's in the air. 3 interceptions last year. It'll be very hard to find a better safety duo in the country than Dean and Torrance. And a good safety duo, you see with the Buffalo Bills with Hyde and Poyer, they can cover up for some weak cornerbacks. And I'm not saying the Florida cornerbacks are weak, but when you have two safeties that you really trust, have played a lot of football for you, I think that's going to make this Florida defense a lot better.
I mean, as a Florida fan, this has kind of got to be the strong suit. This unit was solid last year. I think it can get better. Obviously, they lose Kyer Elam, but they're getting everybody else back. A very talented group of guys. I love Avery Helen. I thought he was an excellent player. They're a little grabby is probably the one thing you notice. They did get some penalties.
Yeah.
But I thought some of them were a little ticky-tack in the first place. And they're just a aggressive playing group. So I think that's kind of what you want. I mean, you like to limit the penalties, but they're not giving up a ton of space. They make you beat them, all of them. And so, I think this unit needs to be great at the end of the day. This is Florida. If your defense is going to be really good, it has to be led by this back end group, and they got the talent to do it for sure.
Yeah, and then I'd add Jalen Kimber coming over from Georgia. He was very good for Georgia. And Jason Marshall, he was a former 5-star recruit. The talent's there, the play's there. And again, this defense, and I noted it before we even started talking about the defense. It's a talented team. The names we said are all guys who can be all SEC, potentially some of them all Americans. They just need to play like that. I want to take a look at their schedule. Vegas has them at 7 wins, and I'm higher on this Florida team than 7 wins. And really that win total has a lot to do with their home opener. With all the games going on, you have Georgia going on the road to play Oregon. Ohio State, Notre Dame, Arkansas, Cincy. This is possibly the game that I'm most excited for. The Pac-12 champs and the Utah Utes going to Gainesville, playing Florida at night. That place is going to be rocking. And I think it's going to be the best game of the week. The line is set. Utah's favorite, 2-point favorites on the road in Gainesville. Dill, what is your initial feel on this game? And we're going to break it down later on when this game is kind of coming up.
I mean, aside from just being straight up stoked for it, because you're right. Florida's got new energy, got the new coach. The Swamp's always kind of rocking no matter what, even when they're bad. So Utah's good. It's good. The Mohamed Diabate is coming back to Florida, making his return. And I mean, Utah, they sneak up on you, not the most athletic team, but they'll beat you up. And Florida did do some things to bulk themselves up with those offensive line transfers. Billy Napier maybe running a more of an intense style than Dan Mullen, who is a bit of a laid back coach. It always seems like he has been. So we'll see. I mean, if Florida can, you kind of know Florida's the more talented team. The problem is you got to play really good football, and Florida in the past hasn't played really good football enough.
Here's what I'll say about this game, and we'll move on to the rest of the schedule. Is this Florida team has struggled with physicality on the defensive side of the ball. You're going to know if that problem is fixed week 1, because Utah is going to try to run the ball down your throat, and we're going to see if Florida can stay in the box and tackle against one of the best teams in the country. Normally, if you told me a Pac-12 team's going on the road playing an SEC game, I'm picking the SEC team, and I probably am picking Florida, but it's not going to be that traditional Pac-12 versus SEC team, because this Utah Utes team is very physical. Now, moving on in the schedule, Kentucky at home, USF at home. You have 3 games at home, and I think there's a good chance they can be 3-0. I'm really excited for that Kentucky game, a revenge game from last year. Will Levis versus Anthony Richardson, two of the most talented quarterbacks in the country. Then you go on the road at Tennessee. That's going to be another fun one. Eastern Washington, Missouri, and then LSU at home. So what? Your first 6 out of your first 7 games are at home. If they can come out of this 5-1, 4-2 down the stretch, they're going to have some tough games, but you got to feel good about that. Off week, Georgia at the neutral site, Texas A&M on the road, South Carolina at home, and then you finish with on the road at Vanderbilt. It should be a win. And then on the road at Florida State.
Interesting one.
That's going to be
always tight. One. It's always good games.
It's always tight, and that's going to be the game where I think they'll be hanging at probably 7, maybe 8 wins, and that can be the game where it's like, how good is this season going to be? Is it going to be a 7-win season, or is it going to be a 9-win season? And that's kind of where
then that makes such a big difference, and you got to beat the rivals. And
yes,
is it realistic to think Florida is going to be an SEC title contender with Georgia coming back as a hammer? Probably not right now. But yeah, if you just want to see some momentum, like that's when you're rolling in a new coach off a tough season, you do want to see. And again, it's not like Florida's coming from a place where they have no talent. That was never the problem with Mullen. It was just culture. Could they play football the right way when they needed to? And they just, frankly, they weren't doing it. But you still have the bones of some really good players. Obviously, you just want to see them kind of realize their potential, I guess.
They got the talent. They just got to play with it. I think we'll see a better team. I think we'll see a more engaged team. I think we'll see a more disciplined team under Billy Napier. That's obviously what they brought him in to do. Guys, we appreciate you checking us out again. If you guys do like the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We appreciate it, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.